This is a podcast about our lived experience, which unfortunately includes infant death and subsequent mental health struggles. Please take good care of yourself and only listen if this content feels safe for you right now. We'll still be here when you're ready.
Hi, I'm Judith.
And I'm Alina. We are internet friends turned real-life friends who both experienced the tragic loss of our sons to sudden infant death syndrome in winter of 2021.
In the year after Aiden died, my husband and I both became unemployed. My parents divorced, and we had to move 5 times for various reasons.
And as for me, just a few weeks before my son Quinn died, my then husband had come out to me as a transgender woman and were subsequently divorcing.
It's been a lot.
It's been a lot.
But as long as we're living, we will love our sons deeply and work to make sure that we live a life that makes them proud.
Welcome to As Long As I'm Living podcast.
We're so glad you're here. Julia, it's such a pleasure to meet you. And sorry,
Yes.
I was distracted.
No, it's okay. It's so nice to meet you too. I'm hoping in real
This
life
is
we
so
can meet
cute.
someday.
Oh, wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alina, I was going to say maybe at Quinn's bar mitzvah.
Maybe at my wedding.
Yeah.
Maybe at your wedding. That's more likely than Quinn's bar mitzvah.
So everybody, welcome to the next episode in our Friends series. I say next episode because I don't actually know what order we're gonna air these in, but I'm here to introduce you to my friend Julia. We already did an episode.
Kind of confusing. I think we need to Julia, what's your middle name?
Marie.
Okay, this is Julia Marie.
Yes.
Julia Marie.
That sounds
We did
great.
an episode with Judith's friend Julia. We actually already released that one at the time that we're recording this. And then this is my friend Julia. And what I think is kind of funny is one of Judith's and my very first conversations before we even took it off of Reddit. It was one of our very first text exchanges was how we both had pregnant friends named Julia.
That is so crazy. I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
We were like, our fucking pregnant friends, Julia, how ridiculous. We were like, we love them, but we hate them.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we were just there to trigger you at points, you know? Really just hurt.
So Julia,
why don't you tell the audience what your and Alina's friendship looked like before the loss? Like how you met, what your friendship looked like.
I think it's actually very interesting the way it flipped after Quinn passed. Alina was the take care of everybody, take care of the things that needed to be done kind of person. And I mean, I wouldn't say, I think we did take advantage of her in the sense of you know, oh, hey, can you get the Uber? Or hey, can you set up the dinner reservation? And Alina would always be that person.
It was my pleasure.
No. And I actually, when me and Alina really started being friends, it's kind of funny. I had asked her to be my bridesmaid in my wedding. And it was kind of I had super low expectations because I knew Alina well. I had spent a lot of time with her, but I knew her through Kaylee, her ex-wife, I don't know.
Still technically married. Only 2 more weeks, though.
Okay. Is it on Thanksgiving? That's going to be an interesting
It's the 25th.
Night. It's the 25th. Okay. So anyways, yeah, so I met her through Kaylee and we started spending time together, but we hadn't gotten into the breaking of being good friends yet.
Yeah.
And I knew you were going to be a good friend, and I think I have one of those things where I don't think I deserve good people in my life and blah blah blah. That's my shit, fun stuff. And I remember that I asked you to be in my wedding, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have low expectations from everybody and see what happens. And Alina pretty much and our friend Audrey planned our entire bachelorette party together, and it was
was that fun.
It was so ridiculous though, and it did make me feel so loved and taken care of in a way that I honestly had never experienced before. Basically we I'm trying to think what I was saying.
I mean, so we met, like you said, we met through Kaylee. You went to high school with Kaylee, and you knew her in high school, although your brother actually is Kaylee's age.
Yes.
But so Kaylee spent a ton of time at your house in high school, a ton of time at your house throughout college. I actually met you for the first time on Kaylee's 21st birthday because you came to visit for her birthday.
Oh my God. That was such
and
a
Kaylee
crazy...
and we were not dating yet, but like, you know, we were already really good friends. And so that was when I met you for the first time. And then I feel like so let's see, that was 10 years ago, which is crazy. And then I feel like it was around the time, you were engaged, that was when like we started to become friends in our own right.
Yeah.
And now we're absolutely friends in our own right.
For sure.
Like 100%.
I think we kind of like let it go as like a slow burn though, which is something that like I think as I grew as a person, I did the whole like love bombing thing and always thought like relationships were too good to be true and I'd end up in really toxic friendships. So like I remember I've consistently said to you and Audrey before, like I don't understand like why you're being nice to me. Like I just am, unfortunately I'm like a person of like that kind of trauma and stuff like that. So I just and getting to be, I said this actually when we found out Quinn died, I was talking to Audrey, getting to be Alina's friend, being on the receiving end of her love is just bonkers. Like it's such a privilege. It's so much, it's just a giant hug. I don't know what else to say. It's just this wonderful thing and you feel so cared for.
Judith's like, this is so sweet.
Are you shocked?
It's so odd. This is so odd. I've never heard.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you 100%. I do think that, but I've never thought about it in that way. Like I mean, she gets so much from your friendship. Like it's reciprocal. It's like a very, you know.
Yeah. Like I would say like our friendship was built on like deep conversation too. Julia is somebody who really loves to like you are not a small talker. You're like, tell me about this. Like, let's get into it. Like, I think I remember just being not when I first met you, but when I first like really started to become like close friends with you, I found it so easy to get to know you and feel like you really knew me because you ask like these really good questions. And I'm like, I haven't thought about that. And then we like, you know, I feel like how many nights have we spent like you, me, your husband, Audrey, Kaylee, like everybody just like sitting there talking for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Ridiculous.
Like that's like what we do, right? Is just sit there and talk inside. Like we don't go anywhere. We just sit in the living room and just talk for hours.
Maybe a little bit of wine, but like, that's not even like the main focus. I appreciate that though. And I think I can be the person, I realize now that I can be the person that holds space and it is in a way that it doesn't always take me out. Like, you know, you hear people talk about that, about like how they do too much holding of space. But I think over the, 34 years that I've been alive, I've starting to figure out a balance and and our friendship though was very, I was gonna say, not surface level. Like we talked about stuff. We definitely were in it. Although I do want to say, because I don't know if you remember this, I'm guessing you probably do considering how you look at your life now, but like I remember we would be talking about deeper stuff, and you'd be like, guys, I have no idea what you're going through. Like, my life has been amazing. Like, I've been so lucky. Like, the only loss I've had is, like, a grandparent. Like, I don't know at all what you guys are talking about, and I'm here, like, for you. I love you, but, yeah. And
I would have described myself before the loss as somebody, like, who had an easy, straightforward life, no real mental health issues, like, no trauma, like just smooth sailing. And like for whatever reason, like the friends that I found in my adulthood, like I feel like kind of like, no offense to any individual person, like a messed up bunch. And now it's like, it feels nice, like I fit in a little bit better. But anyway, we'll get to that.
That's so terrible.
I hate to say that. But like I genuinely, you're right. Like I didn't understand before. And I obviously don't understand anybody's individual stuff now because everybody's trauma is different, but like I do have a little bit more of a understanding. So anyway.
Well, you went from like A to like Z though. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Just like you didn't get to like go in the in between. Like it was just one side.
No lowercase, middle case T trauma. I went straight for that capital T.
Yes, you did.
So leading up to when Quinn was born, you were also married, and I guess were you starting to think of a family too? Like, did you feel like you and Alina were kind of entering this new stage together?
Oh, I felt honestly like guided by Alina, because I always looked at Alina as like kind of the braver person in our friendship, and she always had her shit together. She just always, like, hey, remember when you change your name, go do this, like that kind of thing. She also, between her and Kaylee, when they mixed their names together, we ended up doing the same thing because we loved it so much. Like, they're trend starters. Like, at least to us, they were.
And we were on the same track. Like, we got married the same year. And then just to like jump ahead a little bit, you found out you were pregnant literally like as Quinn was born, right? He was
I did.
Your daughter was conceived as basically the day Quinn was born, essentially.
I think we talked about that, and it could very well be, it's somewhere between like September 20th into like September 27th or something. Like,
so your daughter was conceived at Quinn's birth.
Yes.
So it was all very much like on the same track. And so when Quinn died, you were 4 months pregnant?
I was 5 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you tell us like hearing about what had happened and like where you were and like how that all shook out from your perspective, from the friend's perspective?
Yeah, from the friend's perspective. We were moving that day. I will never not know when Quinn died because it was our moving day. January 18th, 2021. We were moving from our apartment in Burlington, and like we had been there so long, and I was very sick with my pregnancy. I had like lost like 30 pounds. It was crazy trip for me. And so it was a very exhausting day. And I remember that I got a text, it was on our Slack messages from Alina. I think it was at like 8 a.m. She goes like, hey, when you get in, like when you're ready, like take a video for me, show me the place. Like I want to see what it looks like. And then obviously I wasn't able to like talk to anybody for the entire day. I sit down, we're sitting on our couch it's like this really old ratty couch that we're going to throw out. That's in our living room with like boxes around us. And I open up my Slack and it says Quinn is dead.
I think I said Quinn is dead. I wish I were joking, but I'm not.
I'm not. Yeah. I had memorized it at one point because there was so much information to like be in just those sentences. I also remember that you said very clearly, which was always something I appreciated about you anyways, of like, don't call me. Like I need a moment. There's people here, like, all this shit is happening.
I think I said Quinn is dead. I wish I were joking, but I'm not. Please don't call or text. I have to leave my phone on because the police and the social workers are calling. So I do not call me. Don't text me. I won't be able to answer. Like, I'll check in later or something. I forget. But like, I basically was like, I can't be like, because we were being investigated by the police.
Right.
And everybody was calling us. And I wanted to be able to know that if someone was calling me, it was something I had to answer. So I was don't call.
Yeah, no, of course. And I think I actually, like my husband was sitting next to me and I think I like actually opened up my phone when he was eating and I just started sobbing. Like I didn't even say anything. I just was like, ah! And he took the phone from me and looked at it and then he started crying. So we were both kind of sorry. That's my nervous laugh. It's not a good thing.
No, believe me, I feel it. I do that too.
Yeah. So we were both like sobbing and confused and angry and kind of went like through the whole thing. Like we were kind of moving through all those icky feelings. And, I would say that they're always still there on some level. Like I still feel that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just remember, I think Scott went up, that's my husband. He went up and, he called his mom. I called Audrey and we cried on the phone and, talked about, I think one of the first things we said though, Audrey said it was like, of course it's like Alina to like immediately be talking about donating her breast milk. Like she has to help somebody within like this horrible, horrible loss that she's having. And it was one of those things that I remember I thought to myself, okay, but so that means like she's still in there, cause I was afraid that you were just going to disappear. Like, which I would have been understandable for the record. Like that's what I thought is like, she could disappear.
And this also was coming on the heels of Kaylee's coming out.
which we had already had some talks about too.
Yeah, so obviously like that was all so fresh, but you and Audrey were some of the people I had been talking about that with. So I think you had probably a clearer sense than anybody else in my life at that time just how much I was already suffering.
Yes. Yeah.
I would say that you and Audrey probably had the best sense of that. And then to like throw this in the mix.
Yeah, it was that thing of I went honestly straight to anger. I remember again we were talking to Audrey, and it was like, why isn't there like a mean man in a trench coat that I can like blame and like assassinate and like just put all my anger in, because like she had enough going on already. Like,
yeah,
what do you do? Yeah.
So after you got that text and you and your husband spent some time just kind of crying and being in your own world, I mean, like, what were you thinking? What were your thoughts? Like, what did you think you should do? What happened next?
Well, just like you guys say this stuff about, and I think I heard your friend say this too in the interview, like, there isn't a manual on how to grieve. There definitely isn't a manual on how to hold space for grievers. Although I do think your podcast is really great for that. You know, we're getting there.
We'll
Maybe there's some more conversation, with that happening. But I do remember that I was like, okay, so how do we navigate this? Like, and I already knew because I had a lot of friends who also had, actually, that's not true. My aunt lost her daughter. So I did have someone closer to me who did lose a child. And I was a part of it in the sense that, like, I was there for the funeral. I talked to her, like, we're close-ish. What I remember is that everybody I've ever talked to who lost somebody just wants to talk about the person. All they want to do is talk about that being. They don't want to pretend they don't exist. They don't want to pretend it didn't happen. They just want to talk about them. So as painful as that could be at times for me, in my perspective, I knew how much more painful it was for you, and I imagine for you too, Judith. And that there's still this like desperate feeling of like getting their name out. Like, you exist. You were here. You were here. Like, I didn't dream this up.
Yeah.
You know? So that's kind of the route I took of like, I think I messaged you in Slack, like I did a personal message. And I also like, it was interesting. I did notice that I set like an expectation for myself of like, she may not ever answer again. And like, I just want you to keep sending messages. Like, that's what you're going to do. Like, that's all we're going to do right now. So I sent like a really long message. I think you sent me like a heart, or maybe you did say something. I can't remember. But
it was
like,
probably just a heart.
It was probably just a heart. Yeah. For a long time, like, I knew that the heart was like, hey, I'm exhausted. My baby died.
Yes, exactly.
I love you. Like, and so like, that was kind of like our language within text. But yeah, I do remember just writing like that initial, like, what the fuck? Like, how did this is so unfair. Like, you're already going through so much. Like, I can't even begin to fathom like how you're feeling right now, because I feel like this, you know, and like trying to find the balance of like sharing how like much Quinn affected me, but also not burdening you with like new crappier thoughts, you know? Like,
I remember one of the earliest, like I think actually the earliest conversation I can remember having with you, we may have talked before this, but obviously my memory at that time is horrific.
Yeah,
like
of course.
Just so terribly amnesiatic.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah, that's what they say.
I knew what you meant.
I remember you shared with me that you had a dream about him when he was like 5, and he was really into dinosaurs. And I still think about that all the time, that like maybe he would have been a dinosaur kid.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe he would have been, you know, like I don't know. And then, so you were pregnant at this time.
I was, yes.
Which is complicated.
It was complicated, for sure, yeah.
It was complicated. And I remember just feeling, I even remember apologizing to you, I think. Like, I'm so sorry if this is going to ruin or make you feel more anxious in your pregnancy. Like, because I really felt like it was so unfair. That it was almost like I couldn't accept how awful this was for me at that time, but I was able to see like I really felt really a lot of grief on behalf of my parents and my brother about how much that they had lost with Quinn. And I really was feeling like, oh my gosh, like Julia, we were supposed to be mothers together and now we're going to lose that. Like I really felt that lack. I really felt it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think from my perspective, I think that was like a couple lines down from like you telling us Quinn had died. Like that you were like, it was something like, Julia, this is so rare. Like this doesn't typically happen. Like it's not going to happen to you. Like you immediately went to taking care of me, which is, again, that's very Alina, like to go that way. But I think it was Audrey who like straight up yelled at you and was like, oh my God, stop taking care of Julia. Like, what is wrong with you? Your baby died. Like, you know, and it was like, that was kind of my reaction too, of like, I understood where you were coming from, and I understood that you were kind of, I guess you were seeing like that wave and where it went out. Yeah. And maybe it was easier to be there than in the center at that time. Like maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
But you didn't come to visit. We did not have a funeral. We did have a Zoom memorial, which you did come to. Yes. Which I think was really hard for everybody involved, obviously.
Oh my God.
But you were in the midst of a high risk pregnancy with you had HG. How do you say it? Hyperemesis. You were really sick.
Gravitara. I always forget what it actually is.
It's what Princess Kate had.
Yes, there we go.
You were really sick. You then, like, not to like say all your personal stuff, but you were really sick. You then had gestational diabetes. Yep. You had all of this, like, I mean, so many that you had a very, very challenging pregnancy.
I did.
And it was COVID, and you live about 4 hours away. So a visit was not feasible. And also I'll say, like, Kaylee and I we did not want people
to see me.
Not to see you.
Oh, no.
Just to see people in general.
Okay.
But I also can say, like, I couldn't have seen you. I could not have seen pregnant Julia right away. Like, I literally could not have done it. And it was never even a question, but I would have said, like, please don't come, even if it had been a question. Sure. But you did. You sent so much food. You, like, sent a whole care package that had all kinds of delicious goodies in it. You also sent us, like, a Grubhub gift card. Yes. Like, you were very present, even though you weren't literally present. Mm-hmm. But then I think, like, the first transition point happened. It was in April, I think.
Yes.
I came to visit you.
Yes. That was a big deal for me.
Yeah. And you were pregnant. You were 7 or 8 months pregnant.
Yeah.
Baby girl was moving like crazy. She was living her life, kicking around, even though she was making her mom miserable.
Yeah, I was always grateful for that. So.
And I brought you so many of Quinn's things. I brought a whole trunk load of stuff.
Yeah, you had a whole carload, essentially, of Quinn in your car.
Yeah.
And it felt almost like you were giving me a piece of him.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it felt like for me, too.
Yeah, and I still, I mean, there's still stuff we use of his every day. She just grew out of one of his sweaters. He had, like, this cute little, I think it was like a black and white, like, mix. Well, it was a zip-up, not a sweater. Yeah. And she just grew out of it, and I had, like, a little bit of sadness about that. Mm-hmm. But, like... Yeah, and we used it. Like, I was like, I want to use this stuff. Like, I want it to be the kind of thing where, like, you know, just because, like, a baby that had died had touched this does not mean it should not be used.
Yeah.
And it's with that kind of love of, like, holding space for, like, in my mind, my daughter, you know, this is your cousin. Like, that's how I kind of saw them being. It's like, this is your cousin. Like, you would have been close. You would have spent tons of time together, you know, and like, you're sharing, you know, like that's, but it was a very special visit for me in general too, because I did feel like it was the first time I saw you since he died.
Yeah.
In person. And I think you just don't understand. You can do all the Zoom calls you want, but like you just don't understand like the effect and like how it changes you.
So how did I seem to you? How did I look to you when I showed up at your house?
You physically looked lower to the ground, which is very bizarre, but I got that feeling. And I am a massage therapist, so I'm going to say that. Like, I do tend to look at people's postures, even though I have awful posture myself. You know, and I noticed that like it was the way you were carrying yourself. You had mentioned that you were feeling insecure about some stuff with your body in general too.
Yes.
Like you had
You
shared
can share
about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Like you were talking about the breastfeeding and how you felt like your breasts had changed a lot. And like, I remember that I have this memory of us looking at each other's boobs and being like, oh, no, that's fine. Like, do you know what?
I was like, do you see how low they are? They used to be up here and now they're down there. And like your husband was like sitting in the room and I was like, look at these boobs.
Yeah. And he was like, I don't know. I think they look great. I like those boobs.
I was like, thank you, Scott. That really means a lot.
That's the kind of friendship we had. It's like, no, guys, your boobs are all great. I mean, keep doing what you're doing. They're all great. Like, so that was pretty fun.
Yeah. But okay, so I look lower to the ground and I'll say like, I look at pictures of myself from that time and I just feel like I look gray. Like I look pale. Like I have no life behind my eyes.
I have a picture of you with Pabu, my cat, and I remember there is. I'll have to send it. I'll send it to you, and you can see if you sense that in it too. Like I can see there's like a less color in your face, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
maybe.
I want to go back a second because I have a question.
Yeah,
as someone who feels like Alina, like you weren't worthy of Alina's, I don't know. Love. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
How did it feel when she was turning away from you? Because it was kind of like confirmation of like your own self-esteem issues.
That's a very good question, Judith. Yeah. I think luckily, this is what I'll say. Luckily, I had done enough growing from like when me and Alina started being friends. You know, and even Alina being in my life, because like I knew how she was as a person. I was learning like how she moved through the world, and still like watching us go through it together. She gave me a heads up, so that's I feel like me and Alina have that kind of healthiness in our relationship where it's like, hey, I just need you to know that like I may have to disappear. Like, you know, like there are going to be points where like I'm going to be very triggered by you. And I would say that I think I probably would have gone down more of a hole and been sad and let my own insecurities that I'm carrying about our relationship take me down. But because she was willing to inform me, that changed everything, you know?
I remember like right when you were getting to the end of your pregnancy, I think we had like a very brief conversation around like, hey, like this is going to be a really hard time for you, Julia. Like I'm going to just step back because I think you're not the right person to support me and my dead baby, like as you're entering the end of pregnancy. And then I remember when your daughter turned like 3, 4, 5 months old, I remember saying to you, like, I'm going to need to take a step back. Like I can't look at pictures of her for this period of time. I did try to be really upfront about that. And I would like to say I was like that with everybody, but I think I was the best about that with you and with Audrey.
You were 100%. There was
and
never.
So you just kind of like took it. You were like, okay.
No, I like that. Anymore? Do you know what? If we're getting into that, I think that something that made me like I got triggered and was like, I went into myself, like, because I do feel like we're such egotistical human beings. Like, we just have to go to our place versus, like, seeing the other. Is that when I got really sick with postpartum OCD, which is, I mean, talking to my therapist, like, they do say that some of that could be that you watched, you know, you had a baby die in your life that you cared about. Not saying that that's 100% what happened. I am a mentally ill person. Like, here I am. This is me. And that's who I am. But, you know, I got that and I didn't even know it existed. And I think the thing that made me sad, and it took me time, it took me a couple conversations with my friend Audrey, our friend Audrey, and some conversations like with therapists to understand why Alina couldn't be there for me. But like, I remember there was not that long ago, well, kind of that long ago, in last year in the spring when we visited and she was 9 months, I had kind of like a rumination attack thing in my brain that happens. So I get like intrusive thoughts. So trigger warning to this, if you guys need to cut this out. Like I would have times where, and it was especially in the beginning, where like I would just play out my daughter dying every single way that she could. That was like part of the, and it's called harm OCD. So when it starts to happen and you don't know why it's happening, your brain goes, oh, do you want to do these things? Do you want to hurt your child? Do you want your child to die? You know, those kinds of things. So I was in a really, really dark place.
Yeah. Luckily,
when I got to the point where I was visiting you, I was happening like maybe once a day. I usually could handle it. But
yeah, that's actually that was an interesting event that we should talk about.
We should talk about that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because, so explain what happened. Yeah. No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So as I remember it, and obviously you cut in too, Eva was starting to act sick. I think her ears, there was some stuff. She had been to the hospital already once. And it's very triggering for a person who already has like harm OCD to like, it builds a case. When your child gets sick enough to like go to the hospital, in your brain, it builds that case of like, here's support that your child will die. Your child is hurt. Your child is, you know, going to be chronically ill, all that kind of dark stuff in your brain. And I remember that I basically like blurted out that I was like, okay, this thing is happening. And I was like, and I think I'm like, of course my brain goes like, she's going to die. And I just said it out loud like that. And I knew immediately that like, I was like, whoa, that was not the right thing to say.
Yeah. It was you, your husband, me, Audrey, and my boyfriend were
and
there.
Tyler. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
And your daughter was like, I think she was having like, she seemed like maybe a little bit mild feverish. It was unclear at that time. Like, is she just teething? Is there something going on? And I actually think she was sick, right? I think she wound up being kind of sick.
She did end up being pretty sick.
But you went into the hall to call the pediatrician. You came back in and you were like, I could see it. You were triggered. You were like not in your right mind. You were not in your right mind at all.
No.
But I do remember you saying exactly that. She's going to die. She could die. She's going to die. Like if that doesn't happen, then she's going to die. If we don't do this, then she's going to die.
That's right.
And it was such a bad situation because both of us, it was like literally we were we were both so triggered.
We were so triggered.
And I say it was such a bad situation. It was okay. Like we talked about it after, but we both wound up having like essentially a triggered anxiety, OCD. Like we each had our own little triggered events.
You had to leave. I remember you had to leave.
Yeah. I actually was frozen.
When Alina got up and left.
When she left, I felt very bad. I felt like I fucked up. You know, like I felt that I had caused her suffering. And those were things I didn't want to do. And I mean, it took me, I'm embarrassed to say, it took me a couple of days to really think about, and it just sounds so stupid when I say it, that like, right, you're saying your daughter's going to die. My son's already dead. You know, and like, because I was so triggered, I think I was just so stuck in the thoughts over and over again. But I knew acutely. I as soon as I said it, I knew because I could see the way it hit Alina. And you know, she stepped out of the room with her boyfriend, and like I was sad that like I knew I couldn't go in there and make her feel better, like that, and that she was suffering because of me. So it was hard.
If it makes you feel any better, I don't remember feeling angry or upset with you or like you had hurt me in any way, shape, or form. I was a little bit, if anything, and Audrey and your husband will listen to this and be like, oh no, like if anything, I was like, why didn't they do something about it? Like, your husband should have taken Julia in the hallway. Like she was clearly in a space where you were not in control of your own thoughts and words. So like, I did not feel like you were like doing anything deliberately to hurt me or like you had any control over it. And sometimes shit just happens, you know? But yeah, that was hard for me. I remember feeling at first I was like frozen to the sofa. Like I actually couldn't get up.
Yes.
And then I did like get up and left, and we wound up having like a perfectly pleasant rest of the evening too.
No, we did.
Your daughter was upset and she was definitely sick, but
that
was tricky.
Well, it was always in the back of your mind too. It doesn't matter like if your daughter's sick and then somebody's here, somebody is existing in space, you're in their space where they have a dead child. you know, like,
Yes.
and then I say something like that. It is. And I do understand what you're saying of like, maybe just check on Julia, guys. Like I cannot take care of Julia right now. Like that's in the very few boxes of things that taking care of Julia means. That is not one of them. That's not mine. So, and I do understand that. And I want to say though that even, I know I was pretty apologetic. Like I knew,
you were.
but I didn't, again, I don't know if it felt even authentic to you because I was still confused in my brain of like, well, why? Like, I know that this happened. Like, I guess I just wanted like someone to be witness to why I'm so crazy, you know, like why I'm like this, why is it like this? And it just wasn't about me. And like, you know what I mean? And I remember you kept being like so graceful about it, being like, Julia, like, you're a human being. You're gonna fuck up. We are, is what you said. You said we are all doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And you just kept saying that to me over and over again because I would like, I'd check in the next day and be like, I'm sorry about that. And you'd be like, Julia, we're all doing the best we can. I imagine it was probably exhausting at points.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I've actually been in a similar situation, not with a close friend, but with a friend where they were talking about their kid. But what happened to me and Alina, I want to ask if this happened to you, is even though in the moment I was able to say, these things happen, you know, you say, you do you, like I was able to say these things, I felt in my heart a guard go up where I was like, I need to take some space from this person. I don't trust them with my vulnerability right now. I don't want to be around them. And they actually came to my sister's house later that day. And I was like, you have to get them out of this house because even though I can be perfectly pleasant, I don't feel safe right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, Alina, even though you're able to be graceful about these things, like, do you feel like you have to put up an extra guard because you know that Julia struggles with postpartum OCD? Or do you feel like, no, like this isn't actually a thing at all? She's doing her best, I'm doing my best, and like there's no difference.
That's a good question. I think that had we lived closer together and spent more time in person together, I think it's possible that that could have happened. But I always felt like you did a good job of filtering, and I hate that you had to filter that because I would have loved to have been able to be more there for you. But I feel like you did a good job. Like I said, we were both doing the best we could to do the reach outs and be there on the things. But I think you did a good job overall of being like, this is probably not a thing for the group chat. And we actually and this is I would give this tip to anybody. We have a Slack set up with just me, Julia, and our friend Audrey. Like it's like a group chat thing. And we set up a channel that's all about Quinn. So it's anything that I was sharing that could have been triggering to Julia when she was like pregnant and then, you know, newly postpartum. And then we have a channel that was all about Judith's daughter too. I'm sorry, Julia's daughter. All about Julia's daughter. Yeah. So that, and I actually still have that channel muted, but I look at it all the time because I love to see the videos of her. I just know that it wouldn't be good for me to see them pop up out of nowhere.
That's right. You can, then you can kind of pick and choose like, okay, I'm ready to look at this right now.
I think that's like a good piece of advice is to like set up your texts, your life, your social media, all of that in such a way that you're not like surprised by stuff that could be triggering. Like when I'm ready to look at pictures of your daughter, I'm so happy to look at them and I love her.
That's different. That's a different energy.
My sister, opposed to it just popping up. Her son, they made a new WhatsApp group where she would share pictures of him. And I actually am not in that group, so I don't know what it looks like. But I've seen it on my mom's phone. And they have since stopped using it to the frequency I wish they would because I don't like the surprises. Yeah. And I can see her son, I can see her family. It doesn't cause me pain in the way it did before, but I don't like feeling surprised about it. I don't. I have to prepare myself mentally to go into that space where I'm comfortable with it.
Yeah.
So I would say even if it feels like, oh, we've been doing this for a long time, we've been filtering out these pictures, whatever, it's been 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, just keep it the way it is and have a conversation before you decide to relax any of those policies.
Well, I just want to say to the two of you, though, that like filtering that stuff is not as hard as you think it is. Mm-hmm. Like you're on the other side of it. You're not going to get it. You guys are in a whole nother realm that nobody else is understanding ever, hopefully. And that's something that, you know, it's not hard to not send a picture. It's not hard to not say so. If I need to say something, my world is crumbling because I have to say something about my baby, I can find somebody that I can talk to. So I just want to say that too. And yes, you guys are obviously really important people in other people's lives, you know, like and you were, Alina, like one of my go-to people for mothering stuff. And on some level you still are. You guided me through my breastfeeding journey. Like you were the person that helped me in like all those really hard moments when I was like, why is my baby crazy? Like I have a crazy baby. What do I do? Do I throw it in the dumpster? Like, I don't know.
Sometimes like, you do feel like you want to when they're not sleeping.
Yeah. And like you still had those words of like, no, Julia, I remember this. Like babies are crazy. You know, like but we've just kind of, I think we're moving through it and figuring out like what is triggering, what's not triggering.
Yeah.
And I do think like, cause Judith said that, coming back to the whole like OCD outburst, I think that was a part of it, was the surprise.
Yes.
Like you weren't prepared for me to say something so intense.
Yes.
And like, even if you had like any sort of, if there was like a buildup of me somehow you knew I was going to go that way. I mean, that wasn't going to happen. But I'm just saying is that I also felt like it was like I surprised you, and then I did even get that sensation of like, oh, she's glued to the floor. Like she's glued. She just can't move. Like you know. And I do think that like, yes, we're going to fuck up. We are, and it's important that you guys hold space for that if you can. But also like, you don't need to apologize for putting the boundaries down. You don't need to act like you're asking for so much.
That's a very nice thing to say. Thank you for saying that.
Of course.
That feels really good to hear. But I have a question, which I want to ask, like, where are you guys now? You touched on it a little earlier, but could you paint a picture of where your friendship is today?
Yeah. I think I would love to hear Alina's perspective on this too. So I would say that it's definitely different. Obviously, easy answer, but I feel like there is still that depth like between us, you know, like we always had that depth, and there's still that depth of like I feel happy that for the most part I think Alina feels safe enough with me that she can say like, Julia, I can't talk about that right now, or even just like, Julia, I am thinking about this and it sucks, like I'm having a terrible day, like talk to me, you know, like that kind of thing. A lot of our interactions are pretty much going through text and, you know, occasional, like, you know, calls like this and stuff like that, because I live very far away. You know, but we always attempt, I think, to see each other a couple times a year. I feel like is kind of our guide. And, you know, it's just about talking. Like Alina said, you know, we talk about, okay, do you feel like we can come up? Like, we have a 16-month-old now, like running around. Like, is that going to make you think about how Quinn would have been over 2 and like would be running around? And is that too painful? Because that makes sense, you know? But what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, I think that we were in a, you know, we just interviewed, you know, my friend Leah also. We just interviewed Leah, and one of the things that came up in that interview was I think part of the reason that she was able to support me in the way she was because her life circumstances were the way they were. So she was, you know, had a work from home job. She was living in a house. Like, she didn't have kids. She wasn't pregnant. Like, she was in a very comfortable, like, I don't want to like say she had no problems, but like she didn't have any like major life upheaval at the time that Quinn died. And so she was really able to show up, and she lived close by. You had so much going on, and even if the stuff you had going on wasn't directly triggering to me, which it was, let's be honest.
Yes.
It was just by its nature triggering to me after the loss I had experienced. And even honestly, like, it was actually really hard. This is kind of a side note, but it was really hard for me to see your husband with your daughter when I came to visit when she was 3 weeks old. I don't know that we've ever talked about that. But that was really hard for me.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I had also lost the husband, the dad, you know, to my kid. Yeah. So even if your life situation hadn't been explicitly triggering, I still think you had so much going on that you couldn't have been able to show up for me in the same way that Leah did. Mm-hmm. So I think just it makes perfect sense that, and it sucks so much. It sucks, but it makes sense that we haven't been able to remain as day-to-day explicitly close and in as much contact as we always were.
Yeah.
It sucks though.
It does.
But suck. That said, like I'll say it, I think we're kind of where we are is we're at a point where, I mean, I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like it's like if we happen to have a day where we're both feeling like and like up enough to like chat and have a conversation, we have so much fun. And I love like chatting with you about whatever's going on, and even like the shit that's going on with your daughter or like with your husband or whatever, like your neighbor who's insane. I love that. But I feel like because we're both like struggling and going through stuff, I feel like a lot of days one of us is like ready to connect and the other one is not.
No, I think that's true.
And that's really hard.
Yeah. I think it's, I did think about that the day-to-day, we were definitely in contact. I guess we were probably in contact almost every day before Quinn died.
Yes, I would say so.
And then as time went on, I mean, you were still talking to us in the beginning, in the early days. It was pretty much every day. You were letting us know what was going on because, again, with your grace, letting us know because we were all terrified. You know, it's that as a friend, you're like, oh no, are they going to fall apart? Are they feeling suicidal? Like, what's happening to them? Yeah. But no, I know that our talking, like initiating conversations is less and less and less as of right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's kind of the thing of like, I hold on to the thought that we are still very good friends. Like I consider you one of my best friends, but we just don't have the bandwidth, either of us. So it's that thing of like, hey, I love you. And then like 2 weeks later, like, I love you so much.
I love you so much. I think if I can just say anything right now, like, I think what I'll say is that I actually really feel confident we're going to get back to being in contact a lot more. I think we're just like in a phase. So my goal for this like next however many months or a year, right?
I was going to say, really you don't even need to put like a time limit.
Like I feel like my goal for this time is I want to stay close enough to you that, and I think we will, like I'm not worried about it, that we still have that depth of the friendship. I still see you a couple times a year in person and get to hug you and hug your daughter and all of that. And then over time, like, I think it'll all kind of shake out. Like I'm not actually worried about our friendship at all. Like we'll get through it.
A bookmark in the book.
That's a good way to say it, Judith. Yeah. Well, and I think ultimately the reality is that our love is not fragile.
Yes.
That's it.
You say that all the time, which I love.
Yeah. It's not. I know, it's my favorite thing. And it's true. Like it feels so true, like within my body. So, you know, and I don't think anything would ever change that. Even something as hard and painful as this.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Julia, for coming and chatting with us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, guys. Judith,
anything else? Do you have any tips for grieving, for friends of grievers you want to share before we hop off?
I think I would just come back full circle to ask about the person. Yeah. Like I just have found that, you know, and it's not, you don't have to be like, tell me all the sad things, but I like hearing the memories of Quinn. Some of my favorite memories with you after Quinn died was sitting with you on the couch in April when you came to visit and just hearing like all this information, like how he was breastfeeding, what kind of books he loved, how he held the books, like how his day moved through, you know, and like I found that all very interesting and fun, and like I get something out of it too. It's not just like I'm trying to make you feel better. Like I have my own, you know, agenda there of like, I want to know how it feels. I want to know. And I still look to you as like a new mom with me. It doesn't matter, you know, because I personally think he's still here. So yeah. I know.
Me too.
Yeah.
To all of our wonderful new friends, we want to hear from you. Email us at aslongasimlivingpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Instagram at aslongasimlivingpodcast. We'll get back to you as soon as our grieving brains allow.
Yay!